Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And our guest for this edition of Media Watch, longtime collaborator, longtime guest, Dr. Alan Singer.
Thank you for having me again.
Always a pleasure, Alan.
Yes,
Glad
always,
you could make it.
Always good to see you in the middle seat.
And we're pre-taping before our Monday air. I think it's on a Wednesday instead of a Thursday. But anyway, you said the obit ran today.
Yes, the obit for Bob Slade ran New York Times today.
Okay, Bob Slade is a longtime journalist in the New York metro area, and Bob was one of the first and I guess the most direct to use his radio platform not just to play music, but to actually uplift his community. And so, as far as he was concerned, if he was not doing something that was in the positive interest of the community, he was not doing his job. So, there are a number of my colleagues who knew Bob well, who worked with him. Do you ever get a chance to cross paths with Bob?
I did not,
Bob?
but yeah, I did not. But of course, I remember him, on the different radio stations. And as you were saying, it wasn't just his music listening audience; it was the politicians listening in on him too, because of his activism in the community and because of his support of younger people in the industry.
Alan, I'm sure you know of Bob from being an activist in the community yourself.
Well, again, he also had taught call-in and stuff. I think he was a pioneer of giving voice to the neighborhood so that people could call in and speak with him. And today talk radio is the big phenomenon. Bob was one of the people who started that.
Yeah.
I'm sure they at times wouldn't mind if I just read the lead.
Sure.
But Bob Slade, a prominent voice in African-American radio in New York City, as a creator and longtime host of the call-in commentary program Open Line, that's what I remember, died on March 23rd at a hospital in Manhattan. He was 70. His wife, Tina McCants, said the cause was complications of kidney disease, which Mr. Slade had since the 1990s.
Yeah.
So, it's 70 still a little young, as far as I'm concerned, to be.
It's young for me because I'm past 70 by a bit. So the nature of the beast is, this is a shout out to one of the pioneers and one of the stalwarts broadcasters of our area, of any era really, because Bob was a stand-up guy. So we wanted to make sure we gave him his due, because a lot of my friends, a number of them in the radio business, were mentored by Bob Slade, and they all went on to stellar careers in the business.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned him at the top of this show, because sometimes if it doesn't make it to the Twitter sphere, the word doesn't get out. And he's not like he was in that generation, so I'm glad you're paying him homage here.
The good thing about it is, because he was who he was and so well loved, when he passed, it hit my Facebook feed the same day. Boom. And there were a number of people shouting out, talking about how much he mentored them and what he had done for them. And these were some serious names in media. So I'm glad we did it at the top of the show, because this show is probably going to be running long anyway with all the stuff we're going to try to cover. So, but we're taping on the day that the Israeli elections just hit, and we talk about the Israeli elections because what happens over there is significant to what happens here, because what happened here, what did our president do just before the elections, Alan?
He gave the right-wing Israeli ethno-nationalists a big boost. Well, earlier, he moved the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which
that was a year ago, so you figured he needed something new.
That's a divided city
Yes.
and an occupied territory, and now he gave them, he recognized their sovereignty over the Golan Heights, which was also occupied territory, taken from Syria in 1967.
That was the election give so he could sway the election.
But worse, Netanyahu then stated, well, based on this precedent, we could start annexing territory in the West Bank.
Yes.
I'm concerned, and many Israelis are concerned, this is going to plunge the whole region into further warfare.
And it's not just the Israelis are concerned, it's all of Europe, it's all that whole zone who realizes what type of gasoline he just put on that fire.
Look, basically, Donald Trump knew that Golan giveaway was going to cement the right-wing faction in Israel for Netanyahu.
Right.
That's why he did that just before the election. And Netanyahu recognized that, and he campaigned hardline on just that, which is why he said leading into the elections, yeah, well, when I get elected, I will just annex these West Bank territories as well and declare sovereignty there. And so it looks like, and Alan, you can tell me, you did a quick check, looks like he is now going to be pretty much cemented into the next term as prime minister.
Netanyahu, and who's the right, and then there's the lunatic right, now appears to have, being only one seat short of majority in parliament, and there's further lunatic rights who keep getting further and further that could give him a majority, but they're going to insist on the annexations.
They're going to need to get something major like that. I just heard a snippet this morning that he had gotten his opposition in the election had conceded.
Yes.
And that Bibi, as they call him, was on the way to getting that coalition together, but did not have it as of this morning.
But he will.
Yeah.
But the point you raised is that Trump helped Netanyahu in the Israeli election, but Trump is not doing it for Netanyahu. Trump is also laying out his stance for the 2020 election. And what the Republicans are trying to do is to say, we are the great heroes of Israel, and they want Jewish voters, but also Jewish financial interests to support them. And what also, the other big bloc, the voting bloc, 25% of Americans identify as evangelical Christians. And they support the actions of the Netanyahu group in Israel because they see it as the coming of the apocalypse and the rapture.
I know.
And I would hate to think that American foreign policy is based on the belief that the rapture and the apocalypse are coming.
Hey, look, we've been down this road before, which is why the Founding Fathers were trying to keep religion and politics separate. But to pick up on what you just said, because it ties to the stories we've covered here before, Trump was just at the Jewish group in Las Vegas. It's the other group, the Jewish Reform Coalition.
Republican Coalition.
Jewish Republican Coalition
Yes,
in Las Vegas. And basically, he was, in essence, saying to them, see, we are the Israeli bulwark, so you have to vote for us in 2020. We are the people who are going to make sure the Golan Heights. See, I just gave your prime minister, and he actually said your prime minister to this group of American voters now. He called Netanyahu their prime minister.
Interesting.
He said, no, this was
Yeah.
not a Freudian slip. I mean, this is just who this guy is, who he talks to, and he knows the group he's talking to.
Netanyahu is not my prime minister.
Well, I'm just saying, but
I
you're
wish
not
Donald
part of that
Trump
group.
wasn't my president.
But you're
Netanyahu is
you're
my
not
prime
part of that Republican group that he was talking to. But then he then did his typical Ilhan Omar bashing before the group, and the group actually was hissing and booing, and this was the day after she had just received another death threat, and this guy was actually arrested, folk. Some guy in upstate New York was arrested for making death threats against this representative in the U.S. Congress because this avowed Donald Trump supporter was threatening to kill her. So this is how this current president that's in office is appealing to the baser instincts and the hard right here and the hard right in Israel and the Israeli bloc, whether it's AIPAC or the Republican Jewish Coalition.
And the hard right in New Zealand, because the guy who did the Islamic murders in New Zealand cited Trump as the champion of white nationalists.
Yes, he
and
did.
Trump's words are reverberating throughout the world, and the world is becoming a much more dangerous place because of Donald Trump.
It absolutely astounds me to hear Donald Trump accuse others of anti-Semitism. I mean, given his track record in business and in life, I mean, for him to propose that the Republican Party is somehow the party of American protecting American Jews and Jews around the world, and the Democrats, somehow don't. It's just such convoluted logic. There's no underpinning in fact in any of it.
I don't know, did you see Charles Blow's piece on Monday? It was very interesting. What Charles Blow says is that to his followers, Donald Trump is a folk hero. So they don't care what he says or what's true. He's bigger than life. And he said, we're not going to defeat Donald Trump by hammering away on facts because we're not, his supporters are not going to change. Yeah. We have to defeat Donald Trump by mobilizing the people who believe in science and reason.
Right, and I have a friend who works in crisis management, in basically advising corporations and politicians how to deal with crises. And he's been in journalism, he's been in politics, he knows both sides very well. He said Donald Trump's supporters are impervious to anything bad said about him. It doesn't matter.
It adds to his legend.
Yes, they'll just accept it, whatever cuss word cussing, an American president cussing at rallies, they just, okay, well, yeah, we'll support him anyway.
The interesting thing about the Donald Trump phenomenon is the fact that the base that he started out with has never wavered, has never changed, which is exactly what you're just saying. The middle ground people, some of whom actually voted for him thinking he was going to be a change agent, they're still sitting on the fence based on the fact that the economy is doing quite well. And so as long as their pocketbooks are not hurting. And so when you talk about don't worry about using facts and stats and anything to appeal to his voters, I gave that up after the election. Those people, when he said I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and they'd still love me, I can get away with it. And he was right, because even though I hadn't equated him to Huey Long, who's the demagogue that Charles Blow, I'm sure, was referring to, those are people that facts, truth, doesn't really matter. If they love you, they love you. And so what the Democrats are going to have to do is get those people in the middle who actually can hear facts and can use their brain, and get new voters, new young people who don't participate in elections normally because they think neither side is good for them.
Right.
And if they can energize those new voters and beat the voter suppression tactics of the Republican Party, because that's how the Republicans plan to stay in power, because they know that they don't have any prescriptions to make the country better, then the Democrats might win. But if they think they can win over Trump voters, that's a lost cause. If they think they can win over Mitch McConnell in the Senate, if you wanted to impeach this guy for all the crimes that he has committed in plain sight, even if the House voted to impeach him, the Senate would not convict him.
No.
And so, but actually I still think you need to impeach him in the House, just so it's on record that you recognize the fact that he did all these crimes in plain sight. So that's where I come on the 2020 elections. I mean, that's me looking back in all these other elections and all these different candidates. Alan, you might have a different take.
Well, Israel is going to be a very difficult issue for the Democrats in 2020. And that's why Trump is hammering away on this. You know, Chuck Schumer has spoken at AIPAC and said, no, the Democrats are the real champions of Israel. And this is the thing. Netanyahu won with a very narrow minority. Clearly, there are a lot of people in Israel that don't like this path. Well, there are a lot of people in the United States who don't like Donald Trump. And supporting Israel doesn't mean supporting Netanyahu. And the Democrats have to be very, very clear of that. You know, we spoke about the issue with Ilhan Omar. I think she has to learn to separate what it means to talk as a community organizer and what it means to talk as a congressional representative. And that's a learning process. But the substance of what she said, that money is pouring in to get politicians to support Israel and support Netanyahu when their policies are inappropriate, the substance was accurate.
Right on
How
target.
she said it was inappropriate, but she'll learn.
Yeah.
But the Democrats are going to have to figure out how they can be critical of a of the leadership of a country that occupies other people, denies them any rights, and really has removed the citizenship rights from people who lived and were born within their borders. I mean, this is a very difficult thing. You know, they don't want to they don't want Russia to annex Crimea. Well, if they let Israel annex the West Bank, they're opening the door for people all over the world to do this.
Well, see, Ilhan Omar is coming from a platform of why is no one speaking for Palestinian rights in this country?
Right.
Okay? That's the platform she's coming from. And every time somebody in power stands up and voices that concern, I will support them. Now, she made the point, and I don't want to stay on this because we got some other stuff we need to talk to. She made the point that you can criticize Israeli policies without being an anti-Semite.
Absolutely.
You and I have already,
Yes.
we've
Yeah.
already been down that road.
Sure.
So every time somebody tries to blanket negate what she has said by calling her an anti-Semite, we will dissect it and strip it down to its nub. So I'm glad you were here to do that.
Thank you.
The fact that because she's willing to speak truth to power, she keeps getting these death threats nailed to her door and called in and whatever. And it's still not fazing her. And I have to tip my hat to her because she's walking in a public sphere. And there are a bunch of crazies out there, as we well know, as New Zealand shows us.
Yes.
And so the fact that she's not afraid to continue to say, we need to have this discussion.
She's a very brave
She's a very brave woman.
Yes.
And guess what, folk? We need to have this discussion about the Israeli government trampling on Palestinian rights, their citizenship rights within the country, and their territorial rights. This discussion needs to be had. But we're going to move on to the other topics because we could spend the whole show on that. But what were some of the other stuff that we wanted to talk about? You had an article to hard turn education-wise.
Right.
We were talking about the Pearson-Google partnership. We do educational issues too, because hey, if you don't raise an educated electorate, you can't vote properly.
Well, one of the things that I do, because I'm a professor of education at Harvard University, one of the things I do is I write about educational issues for different publications, but often for daily cause. And there were a couple of issues that have come up recently that have really been interconnected. Some of them are happening in other parts of the world. For example, Pearson, its textbook publishing has taken a big hit, and they're moving to online. So one of the things that Pearson has been doing is it's working with a company called Bridge International Academy in Africa to develop platforms for basically teacherless schools. And a number of the governments are very upset in Uganda, Kenya, Liberia, because they're undermining education. And these are, you have to pay, families have to pay to send their kids, but they're pushing it, this is the next step where online is the way to go. So the UNESCO has been investigating them. It's a big issue. Well, once Pearson creates this platform, it can market it all over the world. It's not just restricted to Africa or India or Philippines. And what the Pearson is now doing in the United States is they're partnering with Google so that Pearson's test prep material is all aligned with Google platforms, so it's easier to access. Well, what happens is that once it becomes easier to access, Pearson puts more and more into their Google platform. And again, what they're looking to do is to replace teachers. So they're going to sell this to school districts that are financially troubled. Say, see, you could do it for cheap. If you go with us, we're already doing it for cheap in Africa.
Now, Pearson isn't a big name with consumers, but you're an educator. Pearson is deeply embedded in both primary, secondary education.
Straight through college. Pearson is one of the largest publishers and one of the largest global education companies. Pearson originally had the contract for many of the Common Core tests. They lost their New York State Common Core tests because their tests were horrible.
But they get into test prep stuff too, don't they?
A lot of test prep stuff all over.
So they're selling how to pass our tests as they make the
All
test.
right. They sell the test, they sell the test prep, and then they sell the platforms for administering the test. Pearson VUE is all across the country for people who have to take tests.
Okay.
Right?
right.
So
We got-
they sell everything related to tests.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
but they're focused on tests. They're not focused on the full educational experience.
Well,
You're not,
they have textbooks aligned with their tests.
Okay.
Everything is synchronized.
Supposed to
Okay.
intermesh. Yeah, right. They may not be teaching your children how to think, folks. They're just teaching them how to acquire knowledge to pass their tests. That's the way I see that.
and that's a big issue I have, because I went to Brooklyn Tech, where you need to pass a test to get into, and I went there. When I was a high school student, it was a very diverse school. The African American might have been 30% black, might have been 20% Hispanic. I don't know what the other breakdowns was, but it was a very diverse school. It is not now, and based mainly because of standardized testing, which because kids with access to the test prep and the Pearson type test prep, which you pay for, can get that advantage. And even a good student who doesn't get the test prep is way behind. And so I go to, I just missed my Brooklyn Tech reunion last week. I didn't have the time. But if I had gone down to see the current student body, it wouldn't look anything like what I
You were
remember.
there. Yeah.
I think Stuyvesant 8 African American Latino kids were.
That's exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was an absurd number of black kids admitted to the last round of admissions at Stuyvesant, and Brooklyn Tech was better, still abysmally low. Nothing that low, but bad.
Look, I went to Bronx Science, and
there's-
also we
okay.
just walked in and took the test. There was no test prep. We didn't even know what was going to be on the test.
Right.
And today, kids start in kindergarten, pre-kindergarten, prepping for tests, and there's no way the kids that don't take the test prep can ever catch up.
Right, right. And you echoed it perfectly. I mean, I went to a good junior high school, which I had to get bused to. And because it was a better one than the one in my neighborhood, my mother made sure I got a good education. But, it was just regular preparation. There was no test prep. But Pearson's type of program that they're trying to expand globally worries me.
Very much.
Yeah, well, the thing about part of your article that caught my eye was because there was a similar problem about human contact being a luxury item. And this Google Pearson hookup is going to be fostering and foisting a whole bunch of screens on these kids from grammar school on up to high school and college. And in the final analysis, you may have kids who may never see a teacher in the classroom. They'll see a tablet, they'll see a screen, and even as all these educational institutions are partnering and are saying, yeah, we'll give each student a tablet, we'll give each student an iPad and an iPhone and a smartphone, and we'll put our lessons online and all that, they're getting less and less human contact. And of course, the rich people who living the good life, the 1%ers, not 2%ers, they're basically getting away from the screens and the tablets and paying for the human interaction, making sure their kids go to the Waldorf private school and the Windsor private school and the whatever private school where they don't have to worry about putting their kids in front of a tablet. They're going to have a body and a person, human being, interacting with their human being child. And so they're pushing poor and middle-class students into this technological learning paradigm. And the people with money are saying, bring in the teachers, let's pay for that. And so the rich get richer in goods and services and then have a better education and then make more money and stay rich, and the poor get poorer. And Lord help the middle class who don't know which way to go. Well, anyway.
You realize you're both in front of screens, so I can pencil.
Yeah, I understood.
Yes.
But within the context of using that screen,
Yeah.
I can understand that in my pocket would be a notebook.
Yes.
When this power dies, and there are stacks of reporter notebooks that speaks to the fact that if the power went down, I could still research my stuff from pencil and paper and pen and ink.
And when you see me cover the Acer press conference tomorrow, you'll see me with a paper notepad while the rest of the techie press, typing or thumbing their notes into their
I
gizmos.
can't do it. That's why.
No, no. And my brain works better because in the time it takes to lock something down to paper, so little goes into your memory bank. And I end up being able to write the story that much easier.
Yeah, we got about 4 minutes left, so,
yes,
right?
we have about 3 minutes left.
Okay.
It's very scary because the kids are addicted to being online. And one of the things as a teacher, I always try to separate the kids. There's behavior in school, there's behavior outside. School is not outside, school is a different place.
Right.
You dress differently, you speak differently. But what happens is by having the school online, home online, friends play, everything's online, you lose that separation. So it's school becomes Fortnite.
Right.
It doesn't become a place where you interact with people. I mean, we're interacting. We're not texting each other.
Right.
And that human contact is being lost. Kids should be learning to work together, and instead what they're doing is they're interacting with screens.
And there's a certain level of, basic discipline. It doesn't have to be hard discipline, but there's a certain level of basic discipline when you're in a class, when you're in a school, that, okay, I'm in school, I'll have to wait to use that language till I'm on the bus with my friends. There's a certain line there.
One hard term in the last 2 minutes.
Okay.
The border debacle that was caused by the current occupant of the White House by pushing his hardline, his latest choice of words is, "We're full, you can't come in. We're full, you can't come in."
Didn't the innkeeper say that to Jesus, and not Jesus, to Mary and Joseph?
Yes,
Before we
yes.
can't come
We're
in.
full, you
Right.
can't
No
come in.
room at the end. Yes.
No room at the end.
Yes.
So, because the current or former interim, as she transitioned,
Yes.
would not break the judge's rule of law and do strange things like separating kids from their parents, he's decided she wasn't tough enough to stop this new wave of immigrants that are coming in. And so he's fired her. And because there's a succession and he wants somebody that he's going to put in, the guy he announced was going to take her place, they said, she has a deputy. He can't take the job. So he says, oh, well, we'll fire her too.
Yeah.
So the crazy in the White House is doing crazy personnel changes just because he thinks whoever he puts in there is going to be a hard line and going to stop these folks from coming. I don't know. What's your take? You got 1 minute.
40 seconds.
Okay, very quick. 1930s, when Jews were being victimized in Nazi Germany and they tried to get into the United States, they said the same
full.
thing, no room at the inn,
Right.
and they sent them back to die.
Yeah.
And this can never be acceptable.
That's what started the asylum policy. Just that example. And now this man has torpedoed the asylum policy. So
I'm sorry,
I
I
don't
cut you
know.
off.
No, 20 seconds.
Bob?
No, we're done.
Close us out.
Okay. Well, no. It's 15 seconds.
Well, okay, folks. In 15 seconds, this has been another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
Alan Singer, and gentlemen,
Thank you
very
again,
much.
Dr. Singer.
Always
And
good to get
catch
your
us
input.
on YouTube,
And Twitter at MediaWatchEVT.
and we'll catch you the next time, folks.